Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Happy to Health podcast with myself, Danny Williams, Dan Hancock, and Ben Lewis. Now, I feel like I say this every single episode, but I'm so excited for today's guest. He's a good friend of mine, but on top of that, he's a TikTok sensation, amassing over 1.2 million followers, and I think about 6 months, absolutely incredible numbers. It is our good friend, Gabriel Nussbaum.
Hey.
Gabriel,
nice to
thanks for joining me today.
Pronunciation spot on, Danny.
I had to concentrate a hell of a lot. How are you doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Pleasure to be here. Very excited. You guys are happy to have me on. I feel like I still kind of feel like a bit of a fraud that I'm even like being asked to come on podcast because, like you mentioned, it's been such a quick rise over the past few months. But pleasure to be here and excited for the chats to come.
Well, thanks for joining us. And yeah, I kind of understand the feeling you've got because you have grown a following so quickly. Let's dive straight into that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
First of all, where did the idea come from? Let's peel it back before you got all the followers. Where did the idea come from to start posting educational, informative content like you do?
I think it started about, what are we now? Maybe a year and a half ago. Lockdown started. Didn't have too much to do, of course, along with the rest of the world, sitting in my bedroom at home. And I used to like absorb so much educational content. I don't know why, but that's what I was drawn to watching on YouTube. Those were the creators that I was following and I was really passionate about. And it kind of developed into a hobby where I was like, why not take this on myself? But obviously the excuse that it was always lack of time, didn't know what to say, why me, etc. But as I said, lockdown happened and didn't have a lot to do. My fiance won't be too happy with me saying that, but outside of seeing her, I didn't have too much to do. And so I decided to just give it a crack because I knew it was just something I was passionate about. I mean, if you're taking in so many hours of content yourself, why not start producing some of your own? So I started on YouTube, creating educational content about this topic and that topic, but it was always with a focus of education. I always wanted to teach at least one thing that I'd learned. I think I did a bit about fitness, travel, finance, kind of maybe a bit of like self-help, etc. And then about 6 months down the line, someone mentioned TikTok to me. I wasn't even using the platform. I wasn't watching or anything like that. But I thought, you know what, better now than never. Short form content looks quite exciting. A lot easier to edit. I can promise you that for nothing. It's like 20 minutes to edit rather than about 10 hours. So I started to make a couple of videos, again, educational style. I also like to kind of understand the algorithm, if that makes sense, and look at the content that was doing well and understanding the style that people were relating to. And there was a consistent style of like educational content creators talking to themselves, if that makes sense, like a two-person conversation. And I understood straight away why it was so attractive. It's like a look over my shoulder. It's basically like a podcast. You want to get involved in listening on someone's conversation. This one did happen to be just between me and myself. So I decided to change my format after about 10, 15 videos to this conversational style. And the first one I made the very next day was off to 50,000 views when everything else was getting 50 views. So I realized I hit the jackpot there in terms of style, but then it was just about consistently creating different types of content. And it all stuck in the finance niche. And to be honest, I don't know why people were interested in watching what I was saying rather than someone else. Maybe it was the topics. Maybe it was just I had a higher production value potentially for TikTok because I was used to creating for YouTube. And yeah, that it's just kind of skyrocketed from there. I've just been on this adventure for the past, I suppose, almost year now. But the main adventure was the first 6 months when it grew to over 1 million.
Wow, that's amazing. I'd absolutely love to delve into the thought process or the moment where you decided to change the format and decided to have like you said, the person looking over the shoulder, because I'm fascinated by content creation. And I've always felt that when you produce a good bit of content, there's just something sitting inside you that like knows it's going to take off. Was that the case with you, or was it kind of like, oh, this is good, but I'm still not 100% sure yet?
I think that I'd very much like kind of ensured that my mindset had never been too focused on the result of what I was producing. So I always kind of ensured that I was doing it because I enjoyed producing rather than expected an outcome. No, I can't say that I expected that piece of content to do well. I obviously saw it was a style that was working, and it was a style that was inspired by other creators. So maybe I kind of hoped that it would do well over a period of time. I never once expected the very first video in that style to just shoot off. But since then, there's been videos where I've thought to myself, yeah, this topic hasn't been touched yet. People need to know about this. It's such basic fundamental understanding, and especially towards like financial literature, which was how I kind of started off. And some of those videos have flown and some of them have flopped. It's funny. So like, I've always just learned to, as a content creator, unfortunately, it's not up to you what does well. It's your audience that decide that. So I try not to ever protect myself by not putting out a piece of content. Everything goes out into the abyss that's TikTok and the world, and the world are happy to judge what's deemed as a good piece of content.
I think that's so powerful what you just described there, and I think a lot of content creators probably need to hear that. I'd love to know, because you kind of mentioned how you was wary of that from the start, about not being drawn to the numbers and the engagement and that kind of stuff. Was that a learning process, or was it literally before you started putting content out at all, you was like, look, I know it can be a bit of an addictive, toxic place to be if I'm creating content and getting addicted to numbers and engagement and chasing that kind of stuff. I need to protect myself before this kicks off potentially. Was that something you had to think about, or was it just naturally, did it just come to you?
I suppose it's inspired a lot by the people that I follow. So I ensured that I was following and watching that piece of content where people were obviously in fortunate enough positions where they were amassed millions of followers themselves, where they have the luxury where they can say that now. They're like, oh, I try not to look at numbers. And to be frankly honest, I think it's very much in human nature, and it's the way that social media is designed, that once those views do start coming in, there's always something at the back of your mind like, oh, more views. Like, of course, it's human nature. And I think it's a complete lie to say I shut off that idea from the start, that it wasn't about growing the channel and numbers. But ultimately, I think when it comes to creating social media, if your entire motivation, or even the majority of your motivation, is to do with numbers, you'll be disappointed from the start, and you'll never actually be okay with what you're creating. You'll never enjoy the journey. The numbers won't hit. Every time you get a certain number, you'll expect that as normal, and you'll want more and more and more. So I basically ensured, and like kind of, I don't know if you can say, had a conversation with myself like offline, but it was all about the fact that I wanted to do this because I enjoyed the process and the journey. I enjoyed creating content. I enjoyed scripting. I enjoyed filming. I enjoyed hitting publish on something and just knowing that that's a piece of work that I put hours of effort into and it's gone out there. And I think also ultimately it's difficult to grow on social media. It really is. It consists of obviously putting out good content, but there is an element of luck to it. So I think I always said to myself, this is a hobby that I really want to pick up. Why don't I just put a time on it? For example, 2 years. Let's do it for 2 years, regardless of the outcome of the numbers. In 2 years' time, because I did see it as a bit of a business opportunity if it did do well. But I said, in 2 years, I'll take a look at it. If I'm still enjoying the process, then I'll carry on. But for now, like, I want it as a discipline because I know that it's a habit that I want to form. So I can't let numbers put me off producing. I've got to just keep going. And in 2 years, if I'm at a point where I'm thinking, maybe it's not time, reward, effort, and I'm not enjoying the habit so much, then I could call it quits before then. But I didn't want to do it shorter than that period of time.
That's so cool. I think it's such an important point because when we speak, so my background was in personal training, and when I would speak to clients, when anyone was, extrinsically motivated or searching for external gratification, wanting exercising just for a reward or out of punishment or to please other people, they never stuck to it. Whereas if they would then fall in love with exercise just for the joy of doing it, lo and behold, that's when they get the incredible results. So how important is it, do you feel, when it comes to not even just a content creation standpoint, but a business standpoint, to have it as your main passion and your focus so that you enjoy it, and then not focusing on that external outcome? And also, interestingly, because you are so switched on when it comes to this stuff and you're very clear about that, has there ever been a point when you looked at the likes and looked at maybe the follows, and then that relationship became a little bit unhealthy, even if it was only momentarily?
I suppose to answer your first question, I think there is absolutely no greater kind of like pleasure in life than creating a business or a pursuit in life that you're passionate about. So to try and kind of get rid of the extrinsic factors and focus on only the things that you can control, and then create a career out of that. And there's nothing more exciting, is there? Because you're going to be fully motivated to put the time, the effort in, regardless of what happens. And to be honest, I am a genuine believer that if you are passionate about something and willing to put in the hard work, and you don't link it to extrinsic, and you're happy to just put in time and effort, eventually it will go somewhere. It doesn't mean it's going to grow to become some massive like conglomerate company, but it's going to go somewhere where you'll be happy to be self-sufficient and invest more into it. And people also will be drawn to it because ultimately they can see your passion for it is very pure. So I think people relate to that. They relate to realness, especially in this decade, over that you kind of see through a lot of kind of people that are doing it purely for numbers, because you'll see that their content and what they're putting out there is purely directed off the numbers and the results that they're seeing rather than what they actually want to create. That's a very dangerous journey because you'll fall out of love with what you're doing very quickly. And about your second question regarding like kind of numbers, again, it would be a complete lie to say that the first time a video took off, I wasn't absolutely refreshing my phone every 2 seconds, because it was a new reality to me. And it was cool. It was interesting. I've also kind of grown up with a bit of an analytical background, so I love looking at like the charts and the data.
Ben's nodding.
Love it. Big fan of charts and numbers.
Oh, I absolutely love it, especially when it's trending upwards, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, like I said, it'd be a lie to say that the likes and the comments and all this kind of stuff didn't catch my eye, but it's just about checking yourself, really. You understand that there's a reason why you're kind of a bit hooked to it. The social media, the companies that create the stuff also know what they're doing with the dopamine effect. They know exactly what they're getting out of you, whether it's the dopamine effect of scrolling from one video to the next or getting a couple of likes in a video. It's all linked. So I kind of made sure that, yeah, feel free, indulge, take some time, but make sure that isn't the reason. It's a bit of a waste to have success if you're not going to enjoy it at some point. But I always do kind of check myself and ensure that that's not the reason that I'm going to continue. But I don't want to limit myself either. It's like, have fun, but be sensible and reasonable.
Love that. I think that's great. And just to touch on something that you mentioned before about the hard work, the time, the effort to create things and publish them. What does your creative process look like? How do you create a safe space in order to come up with these ideas for new content? You mentioned before that you were editing videos for 10, 20 hours, and now TikTok, it's down to 20 minutes. That must free up so much time for you to then come up with more ideas and to get more content out there. What does the creative process look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's evolved over time to try and make it more efficient. I think that it's a lot of time researching. I try not to put too much pressure on myself because TikTok specifically is a very fast-paced platform where you'll often watch a video from someone trying to tell someone else how to create content. They're like, you need to put out 3 to 5 pieces of content a day, like Gary Vaynerchuk, like constantly being like, you're not putting out 5 pieces of content a day. You're missing out on the biggest opportunity of a decade. I never did that. I think I'd be rare to find a week where I put out one every single day for an entire week. But the creative process, like I said, there's no pressure on it. I like to research my videos. I like to be inspired by the creators. I'm a bit of some people disagree with this, but I'm a bit of the faith that no piece of content is purely original. Everything comes from somewhere. So if I can put my own twist on someone else's educational piece of content, there's no reason not to. Especially if you're going to credit whoever's kind of originally come up with that idea, for sure. So there's that. The editing is probably the best skill that I picked up, but also the least enjoyable. It's a bit of a grind, editing. I think it's probably going to be the first thing that I kind of offload onto someone else when it gets to that point. And then it's all about, I suppose, just hitting record, and it's all about batching because I'm very keen into my productivity. I like to batch this research, batch the writing, batch the editing, then batch the filming. But as I've started to kind of grow and create more and more, I've started to see what areas I'm drawn to, what areas I'm happy to sit down for 4 or 5 hours at a time and research videos. I love that side of it. I love researching. Editing, I can see that I'm a bit more, what else can I do around the house quickly before I go and edit my videos? And obviously, as things grows, you get the luxury of choosing which parts you're going to focus and spend your time on, which is really important to kind of self-check yourself and be like, I'd rather spend a lot more time researching than editing, which is why I said that's what I'm going to pass on to someone else soon. It's not that I haven't enjoyed the skill, and I've enjoyed every skill that I've picked up along the way. But in order to kind of invest in this as a bit more of a business on my own accord, I know that I have to be smart with it. And like I said, I have the luxury of choosing which parts I want to do and which parts I enjoy and which parts I'm happy for someone else to take creative control over.
Love that. Gabriel, you said kind of when you started this journey, you was going to kind of check in with yourself after 2 years. It was a bit of a 2-year plan, if you like. Mm-hmm. You probably exceeded all expectations in a quarter of that time, pretty much. So I want to ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years, 6, 7 years? Social media is going to grow and evolve and change. Is this something that you can see yourself doing like forever, like creating content, trying to help people, trying to educate people? Is this a long-term vision, or was it like initially a business plan that's kind of spiraled out of control?
I suppose it's a bit of a scary question. What do I see this taking on in 5 years? Because it's already become so much of a beast in a time period that I couldn't have imagined. But I think that it's clear that I'm passionate about educating people. I'm also very passionate about educating people that are on level 0, trying to get to level 1 of a topic. So many people ignore. They think that just because they know a bit about the topic, who are they to go and teach about that topic? But I'm very much of the philosophy that there's always someone one level below you on the ladder that needs someone to tell them about that step, because it's so well and good that the people that already are familiar with a topic being educated on it, but what about all those at the bottom that have 0? So that's very much kind of a policy and a thing that I'd like to evolve and grow. Obviously, I'd like to keep growing the TikTok, but will that last forever? I don't know. Like I said, it's a very fast-paced business, and sometimes you just do need to step back from it. But I also have to understand that that's kind of where my success has come from. So I would assume there will be still some element of that in the future. But I think that I'm kind of looking at kind of 2 channels. I'd obviously like to keep inspiring people and educating people as I learn. So I see that as a never-ending journey, because I never want to stop learning, which means that I can never stop teaching, if that makes sense. As soon as I learn something, I want to teach it. So in 5 years' time, I still expect to be learning, and whatever that topic happens to be, I assume I'll still be teaching it on site in some way or form. And the other thing that I'm very keen on is teaching people about creating content. I think it's such an outlet, and people have so much to share and to give. It's a bit of a risk we want to advocate for, because like we said, we know that numbers are linked to social media, and that's just how it is. I hope that's something that changes in the next 5 years, and there's a way that kind of policies and regulations can come in to I suppose control this effect that's spiraling out of control. But I would love to help people, whether that be through creating a blog or creating videos or even TikToks. I think it's so cool to kind of share the journey that you're on, and people are so captivated by it that they shouldn't just want to watch other people's. They should be sharing what their own, because every single person is unique, has their own perspective on life. So I'd love to educate and share with people how I've done it and pass that on, whether that's through coaching or even just through free things like YouTube videos, TikToks. That's kind of where I see my content evolving to in the long term.
I think you said something that's really interesting there as well, because social media always carries negative connotations, doesn't it? And the impact that it can have on our health. But what you said there that's really interesting is that there's going to be a large demographic of young people developing amazing skills, whether it's like editing video, whether it's like piecing music together, whether it's getting comfortable on camera and getting out of their comfort zones, which a lot of people shy away from. So there's actually a huge opportunity potentially with yourself to be that role model and to have that positive influence of, flipping what social media use should be into more of like a creative art. Would that be correct maybe to suggest? Is that kind of what you're hinting at there?
100%. It's about finding a passion in something. And I think that social media is this, I used the word already, but it's this beast that people don't quite understand. And just because you might think to yourself, I don't want to stick my face in front of a camera, that's fine. There's so many other aspects to it. And we're not just talking like Instagram, YouTube, creating a website, a blog, a podcast, just something I feel like everyone's got things inside their head that they just want to get out. And I feel like there are so many platforms that are suitable to every person. And even if you're not that person that feels that you're creatively inclined or want to be that person that's sharing information, there are so many other aspects, whether it's like we said, researching, analytics, understanding, editing, software. I think there's so many parts within this field that it's just that it's growing massively. You're seeing, I think that there's a stat that says the number one job that like primary school students want these days is to become a YouTuber, which is an incredible stat. Like, forget being a doctor, a lawyer, a fireman, an astronaut, whatever it is. It's a YouTuber now. So there clearly is this kind of inkling inside of everybody to pursue a creative career and kind of have that creative control. I feel like as you get older, the fears grow in, the social pressure mounts, and people have these childhood dreams that fade away because of they go to reality. Oh no, I can never put myself on camera. It's too embarrassing. But I feel like social media is kind of the inner child inside of everybody, that because we all grew up creative. So kind of being able to allow and tell people that they're allowed to create, they shouldn't be worried about anything else, and actually pursue those aspirations when they're older is such a powerful tool. But there's a lot of things that you need to help people along the way with in terms of kind of motivating them and giving them confidence to do those things. So if I can be that person, great. And if someone else can do it, that's fine as well.
There's a million and one questions that I want to ask you based on the last couple of things that you said, but I think this one actually will link in quite nicely. So you've mentioned confidence, you've mentioned the younger generation. You mentioned earlier on that relatability was a massive factor as well. And you come across as very self-assured there. Of course you do. You know this inside out. Has that always been the case? Have you always, a little bit more of a personal question, have you always had that confidence to deliver? Have you always been so self-assured, or has that came through experience? And I guess the reason that I'm asking this question is I don't want anyone listening to be like, oh, well, Gabriel's confident, Gabriel's got it all sus, that's why he's able to put that out there. Because one of the main things would be inertia. It would be these younger people feeling as if they didn't have that confidence to put stuff out there. Is that anything that you've ever struggled with?
I mean, the scariest moment of my life, publishing, like hitting the publish button on my first video. It is petrifying putting yourself out there. Even though I knew it was a passion, something I wanted to do and something I'd committed to, I hummed and ahed after I even filmed it, edited it, whether I wanted to hit publish. I was like, it's not good enough to put out there. So to say that I've always been confident, no, it gets easier with every kind of thing that you put into the world, which is kind of why I'm sounding so confident now. And I've probably, in a way, forgotten those fears that I initially had. But I think it kind of says a lot. I don't think 16, 17, 18-year-old me would ever have thought I'd be doing this. Are you crazy? Do you imagine what my friends at school would have said? Me making like little videos in my room about these topics. They'd be like, who are you to educate people on this, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I think that I've kind of grown this confidence with both age and experience in the field. Not to say that I feel like I've had that much experience, but obviously I've got more than someone that hasn't started. But it would be a complete lie to say that there wasn't complete nerves. I mean, you can literally watch my first video. I'm fairly sure that my first video on YouTube, my voice is quite literally shaking throughout the entire thing because I was so nervous, like filming it. I don't think I still have those nerves, but that's just because I've learned. I've put out so many pieces of content that the fear has gone on that front. But I completely relate and understand to people that are scared to put themselves out there. Ultimately, it's scary. You feel like you will get a bit socially judged and you have to be self-assured. I'm lucky to have a very good friendship group that know the right balance between taking the piss and also being like, you're putting out good stuff, which is good. I suppose also you get to kind of a slightly older age and your friendship group shrinks down. You kind of understand who your friends are. So I'm lucky enough to be in that position. I also said she was my girlfriend at the time, but I asked her opinion on what I was doing kind of before I got started. I said, I'm about to do this. She was all in for it. And I've mentioned this to her a few times as well. I've said, to be honest, like, I don't know if I would have done this if I didn't have a girlfriend, or like I didn't have a girlfriend that was keen on this, because that's such like good security for me that I've got someone literally by my side that like, is like supporting it and isn't embarrassed by it. She was like, I'm advocating. She was sharing it. She was 100% on board. And obviously all of these factors helped me, which is why I understand why people can be a little bit afraid and shy. But I think it always comes back to like the thing I think I mentioned to you off podcast, which is everyone thinks that there's this massive spotlight shining on their life and everyone's going to judge them. And like I said, you're the main character in your life, but unfortunately you're just a supporting character in everybody else's that you know. So you think the spotlight shines on you, but unfortunately it doesn't. But I use that to my advantage, that I don't think I'm special, because it kind of unlocks this idea that I can do what I want. And yeah, maybe the first video or the second video might get a little bit of slack. Oh, look at this, you said that, ha ha ha. But by the third or fourth, people are more likely to be sending you messages being like, I love this, like brilliant, so cool that you're doing this. And it's just because it's becoming more and more popular in schools. I think that like that's the age where it's most difficult, but that's the age where it's becoming more popular. So it's going to get to a point where I don't see kind of that age group of 16 to 18, 15 to 18 being similar to how it was when I was growing up and being so brutal. Because as it becomes more and more like common across that age group, it should kind of nullify the effects of the embarrassment of the first few.
Brilliant. Sorry,
Yeah,
I just distracted Danny. We've got another camera rolling there, and we're just going to, for anyone listening, we're just going to change one of the cameras. We're back in the old studio for today. Back in the old studio, we normally have, we've just started filming with multiple cameras because we're back in the old studio today. We've just got one rolling, so Danny's just gonna hit stop and then hit start again.
So the camera did turn off.
Oh,
that's good news.
At least we've got this one. At least we've got this footage rolling.
You guys look good from this angle, so you don't need another one. You've got your multiple angles.
That's it.
Oh, good. Oh, brilliant. Where were we? Let's pick up again.
And we're back. Gabriel, you said so much brilliant stuff just then. But before we get into this sort of the latter part, I wanted to talk a little bit about what you said earlier on in that last bit. You said about experience and how creating and putting stuff out there bit by bit, that was one of the kind of key drivers in building your confidence and self-assuredness. I wanted to know if there's anything kind of more short-term, more practical that you had to apply to help kind of accelerate that process, or would that be your number one advice to people struggling with that? Because there's a lot of people out there, maybe some listeners, even myself in the past, been really insecure about posting content, worried about judgment, that kind of stuff. And I know through experience that kind of diminishes, but are there any more kind of practical tools you can apply in the short term to kind of help get over that barrier? Because a lot of people can be struggling with that really, really, really powerfully, thinking I can never post a video. This is like my ultimate worst nightmare. I can never do that. And the thought of even trying to get experience can be off-putting itself.
I would say what I said earlier definitely stands, that it gets easier with every video, but I don't think that's good enough for that person that's shaking, like thinking to themselves, I'm never going to do it, because that's like a mountain top, isn't it? And you're at the bottom of the mountain. So like, when am I going to get there? One thing that I did tell myself for the short term was that the first, I took this actually from a content creator called Ali Abdal, and he often says, the first 100 things you're going to put out there, unfortunately, mate, they're going to be crap. They are. It's just a matter of fact. You're on a journey. So I put out my first video and I literally said to myself, this is crap, but I'm going to put it out there. And my second one, the same. I still don't think I'm at the point where my videos are good. I'm still saying to myself, this is crap, because every 6 months I can look back and be like, it's hilarious that I did that, spoke like that, looked like that, edited like that, because it's all a journey. So I think that if you can accept that what you're putting out there isn't going to be good, but if you don't start, then it's never going to get good. That's a big barrier to cross. And I think that helped me a lot editing and kind of publishing my first video, because I knew that it just didn't have to be good and I'd get better over time. If I can tweak one thing in every single video, imagine how good my 100th video is going to be. So that helps me hit publish. And then, yeah, I think there's no greater power than just posting it. Don't overthink it. like I said, you're not going to be Mozart on your first video, podcast, blog, whatever it is. So the power to kind of publish it will be absolutely massive. The first one is scary. The second one is less scary. The third one is less scary. Great English used by me there. So yeah, that those were probably the two things I stand by. And then a third thing is, maybe if you really are that nervous about judgment, share what you're doing originally offline with people that you trust and the people that matter most to you. So if that is a video, a TikTok, a YouTube, share it with your family, get some feedback, share it with your closest friends, your inner circle, get their feedback. Because ultimately everything outside of them is just noise. It's just noise that you can choose to listen to, or you can choose to ignore. They say that you've made it on social media when you start getting hate. So I keep that in mind. Every time I get a piece of hate on a video, the first experience of that was like, oh, like, ouch. But I was like, does that mean I've made it? Like, Mom, look at this. I've now got, like, my fiance properly, she screenshots a lot of them and sends them over. She goes, look at this one. This is great. Someone says you look doing.
Nice supportive fiance there.
Oh yeah. There's a couple, like, they're like, oh my God, are you Gareth Southgate? And it's great pieces of content that get put out there. So like I said, you have to take it all lighthearted. As long as your inner circle know what's going on, and they give you constructive feedback, and as long as it's constructive, you know that they should be part of your inner circle. Anything outside of that, just understand to yourself that it's just noise, and with time, the people that you might mildly care about, that noise will disappear if it's negative, but hopefully people are good inclined in their heart deep down. And then from the random people that start commenting on what you're putting out there, I mean, if you can choose to do what I do and take it with a laugh every time you see one of them, that's one way to handle it. But ultimately, yeah, it's just people with nothing better to do. So that would be my tactical advice to someone trying to overcome that barrier.
That's brilliant. And just touching on the fact that you've got such a massive following, you clearly really enjoy the process of creating, editing, publishing. Do you feel any performance pressures at all now to keep producing the level of content that you have? And I know you've touched on that it gets better over time, and you look back on videos from 6 months ago and think, I'm so much better now. Do you ever feel any performance pressures to keep up the volume of content, or are you so enjoying of the process and the knowledge that you're educating and helping people that there are no pressures that you feel in that sense?
It's definitely evolved over time. When it did start to take off and the views were coming, I was like, I need to produce more, like at least a video a day for the next like 3 months. And then I remember going on holiday and thinking to myself, oh, I don't have enough content stored up. Like, what's going to happen? Like, I'm going to come back after a week and be completely irrelevant and be starting from ground zero again. So that definitely was like the initial thought. But I mean, I hope you guys can tell that like a lot of this I've learned as I've kind of grown. So I suppose the most recent example of that is I went on another holiday a couple of months ago, didn't have content prepped, had a couple of ideas of things I wanted to film out there, but I thought to myself, what's the worst that can happen? I used to put a video out every week. I was going on holiday for 2 weeks. I was like, so what? There's not going to be a piece of content posted for 2 weeks now. I'm very content with where I am. It's not going to just like blow up in my face. Nothing's going to happen to me if I don't put out a piece of content. I'll put out some more content when I'm back. And it was so nice to just take that break and have that mindset that there wasn't the the pressure on me to just keep up this cycle of content, this crazy world that TikTok's become, where they expect content every second of every day. And that was a really like big moment, I think, in creating content for me, knowing that there wasn't this, the pressure was purely internal. Because I came back after 2 weeks, I posted a video, people were watching it again. I was like, all right, yeah, cool. I can take a break when and if needed. Even now I'm at the point where I'm trying a couple of different ventures. I want to start creating back to YouTube was kind of my home base, my passion at the start. So I want to try and get back onto that horse. I want to start writing a little bit more and creating a newsletter. And in order to do that, obviously something has to give. So I'm allowing myself that kind of pull back from TikTok because I know that there are other things that I want to try out, experiment with, that I have the potential to enjoy more. Not to say that I'm going to completely abandon TikTok because, like I said, that's where my audience is. I feel in a small way that like it's a bit my responsibility to keep creating these educational videos because people are clearly liking them. But I've taken that pressure off me to create X, Y, Z number every single week, month, so that I can actually pursue the things that I enjoy. And that was a big step, overcoming that barrier of pressure to post every day to knowing that it's a completely internal pressure and I can take the journey how I want it to be.
I think that's really important as well, because a lot of people, I don't think, find that right balance. And you mentioned earlier about being quite self-critical when it comes to previous videos, but it comes across that this is a good thing. This is a good thing that you actually have that level of self-criticism, but it's not debilitating. It's not then really beating yourself up. You're not then sitting about for days on end being like, this is shit, I'm miserable. It's that you're then doing that like in an analytical way. So do you think that's a good trait to have? And would you say that that's, a compulsory part of the creative process, having that balance?
I think it does come naturally. You should, in theory, when you're repeating a habit day after day, you should get better at it. But if it doesn't come naturally, then it's a vital thing to consciously put into your journey, because the whole idea is to grow and get better at a skill. That's ultimately what I'm doing here. Forget about the fact that my skill happens to be watched by millions of people. I've said ultimately I'm doing this because I enjoy the skill of creativity, of researching, of editing, of producing, of filming. And my passion is improving those skills and improving my content. And I seek enjoyment from that. So I don't think I've ever sat down and gone to a video 6 months ago and gone, what's wrong here? Let me critique it, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just little things in my setup and feedback that I get from other people that I always take on board. And it's all about the kind of compounding effect that I'm sure you've all heard of. It's the idea that if you just improve 1% every single day, I don't know what the math is exactly, but something along the lines of after a year, you'll be 370 something percent better just because of the way of compounding, because it's kind of like that kind of snowball effect. As the snowball runs down the hill, it picks up more snow and etc. until it's this massive like avalanche. So don't worry, and I don't try to worry about the big things. I just try and improve a little thing here or there every so often when it comes to me or when the criticism comes in. And it's absolutely vital to be looking to always improve and better yourself. Because that's how as human existence, that's how we grow, and that's where we get enjoyment from.
When it comes to the creative side, as we discussed quite a lot, having a good creative process is something that is imperative, but a lot of people don't actually take the time to step away from the laptop or step away from the computer or the phone in order to allow that. So what sort of things do you do? Again, going back a little bit more, this is more of a personal one, but I see it as a professional one as well. What sort of things do you do to look after your health on a day-to-day basis? What good habits do you have? What things do you do to allow you to prioritize going into a flow state of creativity? What sort of day-to-day values do you adopt to make sure that can be at the forefront of your message?
That's a good question. One thing that I've actually done recently is a habit tracker. There's a couple of habits that I've really wanted to install. Small things, really small things that aren't hard. Like, for example, one was read 10 pages of a book a day. And so because I love analytics, I created this chart for myself that every day I can tick off this habit that I do. So you're nodding along. Do you do this as well?
We've never had so much analytical chat on this podcast. I'm happy that it's been shared by someone else. It's not just me.
Me and Danny are just going to leave the room, and we'll just leave you two.
Honestly, there's nothing better than a green tick and like a bar filling up.
Exactly. Love it.
But I've done that. It's like, honestly, some of the smallest habits, but that's one thing that I knew that I would relate to it. It was something that I knew would push me to kind of create good and healthy habits. And ultimately that would help my creativity process. So that was one thing I did install. I prioritize health. I prioritize fitness. I I make sure that I'm eating the right things. These are all just things that have been important to me. And I suppose that they're not on the habit tracker. Sorry. There's other things on that, but I always make sure that my fitness comes first. So if it was between like sitting down for another 3-hour editing session or heading to the gym quickly, I'll pick the gym, because ultimately I know that one will probably benefit me a little bit more in the long term. So I do make sure I look after myself. Also, kind of mentally, I don't try and limit myself so much socially as well. I know that obviously creating businesses and doing all this kind of stuff is a grind. And some people are like, you need to lock yourself away for 3-5 years to build yourself and build your business before you can kind of enjoy the fruits of life. But I think, like, I'm in my 20s, like, what better time is there to kind of enjoy this? So if there's something going on socially and I'm like, oh, I haven't edited this video, but you're not going to get back that time that your friends are all meeting up, that family event, that family dinner. So that will always be number one to me as well. But then in order to kind of create this kind of, like you said, this flow state, I'm a bit of also a productivity nerd. So I like to make sure that, like, I've got all these little hacks. My setup is there, it's ready. It's very easy for me to pop like my lighting on, my camera in position. I make things as easy as possible for me. Those barriers to getting started. So like, as I said, if I just have to put on a switch and hit record rather than set it all up again, get the positioning right, etc., etc., that's another barrier that I think to myself, oh, if I've got to do that, then I can't be bothered to actually go ahead and do the next step of the work. Breaking things down into little steps helps massively. So whether it's just, I'm going to do just this, like, I want to research 3 videos. That's all I need to do today. There's no pressure on recording, on editing. All I've got to do is this one focused thing. And that really does help you get into flow state, because there's no distractions at all. But honestly, for those of you people that are listening that haven't got into like a flow state when it comes to work, it's something that you should 100% be looking into, because that's where kind of you feel yourself growing massively as a person. And I wish I could have a hack that could get me naturally into that state. But unfortunately, like, we're all human. I've always got that distraction, that thing going on. The phone is always buzzing, but I try and make sure that I set aside periods of like time in my calendar where I know I'm only going to focus on that one thing. There's no pressure on doing any other task towards my content creation. And that really does help me kind of knuckle down, and you can see kind of it build throughout the week and the weeks and the months.
Class. Love that, Gabriel. I feel like every time you give an answer, there's like 10 different things I want to ask you about.
Yes.
It's like, I'm like, he's like, that's gold. I'm going to remember that. And then you say something else. I'm like, oh, that's gold. I should ask about that as well. You make it sound, and I'm sorry, forgive me here, but you make it sound like you've got it all figured out. And I know that's probably not the case, because you're a human, right? You've probably not got it all figured out, but it seems like you've managed to get systems in place, habits in place, reduce as many barriers as possible to getting you into that flow state, into action and execution. I'd like to know, how much of a process was it to get to this point? When you first started creating content, were then barriers kind of stopping you creating, or was it something you tried to immediately try and kind of maximize and optimize?
I mean, I'd love to say that I'm as like productive and efficient as I'm coming across. I'm really not. If I actually showed you the habit tracker, you'll see how many empty I feel like I should make that absolutely clear. Like, even like you said, it's coming across like I've got the stuff sorted out, but it's a constant journey and evolving. And unfortunately, like, we live in a world with so many distractions that I'd be lying if I say that I wasn't wrapped up in a lot of those. I would not want to dare show you my phone analytics time with how long I spend on my phone scrolling social media. I know it's a problem. And I try to implement fixes, but like you said, we're all human. So these are problems that each one of us are facing when we're trying to kind of like battle through. But I would say that the kind of productivity and efficiency side of things was something that I did think about early on. I am still working a full-time job, so I knew that time was always going to be limited for myself, creating outside of working hours. So in order to do that, I'd also spent a lot of time prior to that learning and understanding these processes so that I could implement them myself, whether that's through YouTube videos or reading things and books, self-help, all that kind of stuff. The number one key thing that helped me was always batching. Don't switch from task to task, focus on just one thing at a time. And like I script 10 videos in a day because that's all I'm doing. And that's the best way. That's like the number one hack. If I could give someone one thing, don't try and edit, film, script, except one video in an entire day. It's never going to happen. The time that goes between switching from task to task will basically take your entire day away. So that's one thing. But yeah, I'm always trying to implement and learn something else that will help me. Whether I actually, like I said, force it into my life is a completely different challenge. But if I can try and note something or improve something, like I said, 1% each day, that doesn't just apply for the content and the quality of content I'm producing. It's the processes behind it that are also so vital because without them, the output doesn't come. So yeah, I'm trying that. I wish I could say to you that I'm this absolute machine that can just churn out content as efficiently as possible. And I'm never on my phone and I'm never scrolling on Instagram and I'm never like hooked on that TikTok algorithm, which is literally like the most addicting platform in the world. And it has so many problems. And sometimes I think to myself, like I'm a bad person for putting more content on that platform because I know that it has so many negative effects, but I'm trying to be a little bit more of a positive effect in the big picture. But if you can just keep learning, I think that's all there is to it ultimately. My processes aren't perfect. My habits aren't perfect. My day-to-day, the way I go about my life isn't perfect. But if you can try and just do one thing or enforce one more habit that's a little bit difficult, ultimately, I'll know I'll gain in the long term. So that's how I try and go about it. But back to the word I used before, if you are someone that's struggling with processes, batching is the number one thing that will skyrocket your productivity efficiency.
Brilliant. It's you've clearly done so much research and learning and tried to implement so much of what you've learned. Is there anything that you have learned and know now that you wish you knew when you were younger, maybe starting out in school, leaving school, starting a new job? What would that piece of advice be?
It would definitely be to find your passion as early as possible, because it's just the most it's the best feeling in life, knowing that you're doing things purely for yourself. But if I can kind of nuance that with saying, don't put pressure on yourself to find your passion. I know it's a complete oxymoron, but like people are in such a race. The world and society just moves so quickly, whether that's because of social media or just technology in general. You think that everything's speeding up and all this technology would help us become better people, but ultimately there are so many things that are making us less productive and less efficient because of this technology. So when it does come to finding your passion, yes, you should be constantly on a look for that, trying out new things, experimenting. That's the way to do it. But if you don't know what that is by the age of 30, that's fine. Look at how many like massive creators, industry leaders didn't find what they were looking for until like their mid 40s, 50s. It's unbelievable kind of the pressure that unfortunately society puts on us at such a young age, which is why I'm still looking at this at my age, thinking to myself, like, there's no rush to what I'm doing right now. If I want to start YouTube and slow down on TikTok, that's fine. I don't need to rush to grow TikTok to this massive thing. It stems back again to that 2-year thing. 2 years sounds like such a long time for people to try and stick at something. They're like, you'd stick at something for 2 years before like you even knew any gains from it. 2 years in the big picture of your life is absolutely nothing. What is that, from the age of like 24 to 26? Like, come on, like nothing's going to change. Like, allow yourself, take the pressure off yourself to be successful in your 20s, in your 30s. It doesn't need to happen, but just make sure that you're always doing something, maybe not every day, but every week, every month, that will allow yourself to find that path at one point in your life. I don't even know if I found it yet. This is just something I'm passionate about for now. I'm passionate about educating people, and TikTok happens to be the platform that I'm doing it on. But I'll be a different person in 5 years. I answered your question about what I'm going to be doing in 5 years, but let's be honest, I'll be in my 30s at that point. I won't. I'll be near my 30s at that point. Great for the analytical mind. And who knows what I'm going to be interested in and motivated by. I might be back, like, still be doing my 9 to 5 because that's what I absolutely love. So that's another thing to do. And just to add, I know I've been speaking for a long time, so I feel like I need to shut up, but this is what my family and friends tell me all the time. You just talk for so long. But there's also this pressure on people that they need to be doing something. They need to be hustling. They need to be doing something outside of the standard path. But for some people, all they want and their passion comes from the job that they're doing, their employment, their 9 to 5, their whatever it is in their day. You're like, but you're not doing anything outside. What business are you building? What passion are you doing? What content are you creating? If that's what brings you joy in life, and you just like spending your hours outside of that, like socializing or being with family or being even on your own, because that's what brings you enjoyment, then don't feel society's pressures to always be building it. I feel like I'm very much in this kind of like hustle culture now, because that's kind of what I've been surrounded by. And it's always what's next, what are you doing, what's going on outside of these hours. You've got 2 hours free, why aren't you building something? But if your passion isn't that, then that's 100% okay. So that's kind of what I've learned along this like year that I've been creating stuff for. Ask me again in a couple of years, and like I said, my answer will be completely different.
I love the 2-year thing. It's similar to Ben Francis, founder of Gymshark. There was a similar thing. I think when he was wanting to start this out, his dad said, look, just do it for a year, 1 year. What's the worst that can happen? If it all fails, doesn't matter. It's 1 year out of your life. So I love that. Another thing I'd be really keen to ask is, a lot of the time, people who have the status that you do now, or potentially really successful business people, they almost glamorize the work hard, or the fact that you do need to dedicate your whole life to it, so much so that, relationships are going to fail and you're not going to be able to hold them down. And you've obviously mentioned already that your fiance is incredibly supportive, and that was potentially even one of the catalysts for you to really go full steam ahead with this. How do you find the balance and the dynamics of balancing, a serious long-term relationship and the business side of things as well? Would you agree that some people make it into this thing that you can't hold down to this relationship? Have you seen strains, or do you see it as in both worlds can complement each other?
I'm 100% the believer that both worlds complement each other. I've watched so many creators and like founders of businesses being like, unfortunately, I couldn't build a relationship because the business was everything. But that's ultimately their choice, isn't it? They've chosen to dedicate everything into that passion, because that's what ultimately they wanted to do. If they wanted to slow things down and build a relationship, they would have prioritized that. And I think, like, with hindsight, everyone's like, oh, I want to do this, this, and this. But ultimately, you end up, the actions you're doing are the things that you want to be doing, because that's how we work as humans. If you want to be scrolling on your phone for 3 hours in the day on social media, you're doing that because that's what you want to be doing. So I personally want to be socializing in a relationship, balancing this kind of social media with the other aspects of my life. So I'm doing that. That's ultimately how it is. Is it difficult at times? Of course it is. I know that I could be doubling my content creation, perhaps, with the time that I'd get back if I wasn't with my family, friends, fiance, etc. But I've made that choice to structure my life in such a way. And I think it also comes back to that thing. I'm not in a rush. Things don't need to grow at exponential 10 times speed. If it can grow a little bit slower, and I actually am having fun in all aspects of my life, how much nicer can that be? And I love the fact that there's so much kind of like support there as well. Like I said to you earlier that I'm venturing into writing a newsletter. I'm not writing it, she is. I'm giving her some ideas, but I can't write for shit. She's an excellent writer. So she's now getting involved in this point, because she's kind of enjoying this journey with me. And like, how awesome is that like I can now mix like kind of like those two areas of my life. Like, but I think she understands that like there's this aspect that there are times where she goes, oh, like you're off tonight doing like your content creating tonight. And I'm like, yeah. But I don't know. If I look back at it, I might kind of be like, how the hell did I make this work in the end? But yeah, there's definitely a balance. Like I said, there's holidays, there's family events, there's all these things that I ensure that I prioritize. But there are so many hours in the day that I see as potential to also create content. I'd say another thing was that when I came out of uni, I was doing a very intensive course where I essentially, I mean, this is like weird to some people, but my hours were more or less till like 10, 11 o'clock every night. Like that was my uni hours, how much work they gave me at times. So when I did end up like graduating and starting my job and finishing work at 5, I promise you, I was like, now what? Like 5 to 11, like bloody hell. So that's probably maybe something just that I've been quite lucky with, the kind of that work mentality. But so many people say it. There are so many hours in your day. If you want to make time for something or everything, it's there. It's possible. It's just about your priorities. Yeah, that's always how I say it. There's time. It's up to you.
I'd absolutely love to ask a question. We all are in agreement that the perfect balance of your mental state when it comes to making progress is to be appreciative of what you've achieved, but then also be, wanting to strive for more so you don't become complacent. So can you tell us what is your favorite piece of content that you've done, and tell the listeners what it was and potentially even how it came about? And then can you also tell us, because you're being so transparent with everything, 3 things that you want to improve, or 3 things that you're shit at that you want to get better at.
I thought you were going to come out with like, for example, I think you're shit at this after watching your content. And I'm like,
maybe it is. We don't know.
I'll get my list out and see whether it.
The long list. Pick your top 3. Yeah. In terms of what like one piece of content, I'd probably. There's 3 that always spring to mind. You're going to let me say 3, or should I pick one?
Yeah, go for 3. 3 good things, 3 shit things.
All right. There was one which was the first piece of content I ever created on YouTube. I'm so appreciative that I hit publish on that. Somehow it's also my most watched video on YouTube. Don't ask how. It was. I look at it now and I'm like thinking, I can't believe I did that. But ultimately, that's the thing that kind of started this entire journey off. Yes, I know I'm not on YouTube really anymore, and I'm trying to go back there, and it's on TikTok. But you've got to be so appreciative of like your beginnings and like your roots. And for me, that was the first video that gave me the confidence to create the second, that gave me the confidence to create the third. So I suppose there's that one. The other one is the piece of content that obviously skyrocketed off TikTok when I changed up my style. I've got to obviously be appreciative of that, because that's ultimately one of the biggest education bumps I got into understanding content and how to create it in a way that the platform was responding to. And that's helped me kind of grow so massively in this area. And then the third one was just because I once experimented with a piece of content. I did like finance. And one time I was like, it's really hot today. Why don't I just switch up the educational style and make it about 3 ways to like not like to cool down in a heat wave? That is my most watched video of all time. I think it's got like almost 12 million views, which is absolutely nuts. But it was so like off topic. It's so funny how many comments in the thing, like, why didn't you suggest people to turn on the aircon? I was like, obviously, like that's not a suggestion. Like there were the comments are genius. They're brilliant. I love reading them. But that's the other one I'm appreciative of, just because it kind of showed me that I don't have to cage myself into one niche or topic. I can expand and play around with things and use this as my playground to kind of create what I want to create. At the end of the day, it's irrelevant. Yes, I have my niche and my focus and my hub, but I can jump off that whenever I want, and people respond to that as well. So those are kind of like my 3 routes of kind of appreciation regarding specific content. 3 things to improve on. One would be the channels that I'm creating on. So YouTube was always my passion, but TikTok came about just because of, like I said, like it spiraled out of control. So going back to creating YouTube videos is something that I'm passionate about. And my saying is like, I want to prove to make YouTube videos again, because I used to do it. Like I used to make videos like one every single week that was taking hours and hours of my time. And now I'm struggling to find time to like film one YouTube video, which is absolutely nuts because that was the easiest part of it for me back a year ago. So that's definitely one area I want to improve on. I would say the second thing that I would like to improve is my habits in terms of creating. I've made them sound so good and so like efficient during this podcast, but they're not, in my opinion, just because that's where I am and I'm always trying to grow. So ultimately, I want to improve my productivity and my systems that are in place to make my content creation a little bit more efficient, so that I can put out more stuff into the world that I enjoy, and basically open up more opportunities to myself to be creative. And then, the third thing that I'd like to improve, is that really bad that like I can't think of a third thing? I suppose maybe like bringing a bit more of like my personality to my content. At the moment, it's very educational, and I suppose the reason that people follow me is for like what they're taking from it. TikTok isn't really the right platform for it, but I'm going to try anyway. But I'm kind of very obsessed with the idea of creating a community, a group of like-minded people that can share, bounce off each other, use each other. I can remove myself from it, and they'll still have places to go, people to speak to, where they can learn resources, where they can all kind of develop their own journeys. So I want to try and evolve my channels into a bit more of a kind of like a personal community where like-minded people can come together to kind of all grow at the same time. TikTok might not be the right place. The more I think about it, the less I think it is the right place for that, because it's all about kind of content and not really about kind of, like I said, community. But I think that's a big aspiration of mine, to help people, that so much so that I could remove myself from the process and they still be able to evolve together.
Wow, that's amazing.
Very well answered. Very well answered. And I love the honesty. Like, you're just so honest and transparent. I think that's probably the thing I'm most appreciative of this conversation, is your just transparency. Like, even at points where you sound flawless, like you're happy to be like, no, I'm not flawless, because look, this, and this. And it'd be easy to sit there on a massive following and into success you've had in such a short space of time and take the plaudits and be like, yeah, I did it all myself. But you happily share the process and share the transparency. And I think that's a credit to you and a testament to your authenticity.
Appreciate that. Oh, such a compliment.
Yeah. So, I don't know if Jake told you, but we've got a challenge for you.
He did. I've had no warning. Yeah, go on.
I'll let Ben introduce the challenge for you. We always finish off, but before we jump into the challenge, I just want to reiterate what Danny said as well. I think so many people are going to be able to find this so refreshing, because again, not enough people will show the vulnerabilities, will show the honesty, and will, just admit that, look, we're all still winging it. We've achieved great success in a certain area, but actually it's staying humble that will allow you to continue that journey. When people let it go to their heads, that's when they start to trip themselves up. So just being so honest, vulnerable, relatable, I think is amazing, mate. I've absolutely loved that conversation. So thank you so much.
Nah, no problem. And if anyone listening feels like I've said any like absolute bullshit along the way, feel free to call me out. I've ranted on far too many topics where I feel like I actually thought to myself, I'm actually answering the question anymore. But hopefully the majority of what I've said has made sense. But it's been, a pleasure to be here, guys. And it's an awesome podcast.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Shall we get stuck into the challenge?
Pleasantries out the way. Now it's time for the challenge.
So here at Happy to Health, our initials of the podcast are H to H, which also stands for head to head. So our challenge is basically you going up against our other guests in a very easy challenge. Basically, we need you to hold a squat for 1 minute and answer as many quick-fire questions as possible. All right. So some are simple, others might get you to think. Basically, the number of questions that you are able to get through an answer is your total score, and then you will go up on our leaderboard against our other guests. Sound all right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, happy days. We don't have a prize. It's just bragging rights if you're top of the board. So
how deep am I holding this squat?
How are we saying?
I mean, we can only really see like your top half, so you could probably.
I'm in my trappies.
You've came prepared at least.
Okay, I'm always game. So you tell me when to go, and I'll get into it.
Right, Brian. I'll count you down. 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
When are you most productive?
In the morning.
Who is your inspiration and why?
Ooh, Ali Abdal, the YouTube content creator, taught me so much of what I know today.
Brilliant. What's your favourite number and why?
6, Tony Adams, wear it on my back when I play.
In which subject were you worst at school?
English. I said I can't write for shit.
In which subject were you best at school?
Maths. It's got to be an obvious one, guys.
What scares you?
Not enjoying life.
Cats or dogs?
Love that.
Dogs.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Ooh, right here, London.
What would you change about yourself?
Become better integrating habits into my life.
What's something that you know you have to do but do not like doing?
I'll make another TikTok video. No, I'm joking. I love it.
Time.
Oh.
Oh, well done. Good job.
I think that was 10 if you count the last one, but you did say you was joking. I'm not sure if that's a real answer. After all that, I just hate it.
That'd be awful, wouldn't it?
No, we'll give him 10. You feeling the bun now?
I'm like, mate, I thought I was going to go to the gym after this, but apparently not.
Oh, mate, honestly, thank you so much. I love that. Normally what we do is we wrap up the podcast and then we leave the camera on, we leave recording just for a couple minutes afterwards, as we sometimes feel that we get a lot of gold the second that we hit stop record. So guys, listen, a massive thank you. We hope that you enjoyed that episode as much as we did. So enlightening. Absolutely loved it. Gabriel, for anyone that wants to follow some of your incredible stuff, where can they find you?
Oh, I'm going to have to spell it out. It's the hardest name in the world, but it's at Gabriel.Nussbaum on TikTok. That's where I promise you I like making videos despite the answer to the last question.
This is where I hate my job.
And it's at Gabriel Nussbaum on Insta, and then YouTube. I won't plug it yet. Coming soon, just the full name as well. But that's hopefully where you'll start to see some videos. By the time this podcast goes out, there'll be a few on that channel.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, mate.
Brilliant. Thank you, mate.
Mate, absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Unbelievable.
Boom. That's a wrap. Well done.
Love it, guys.
Good hustle. Well done, everyone. Oh,
my legs.
Thanks for being such a good sport. We do kind of sprinkle some people at the end, but yeah.
Yeah, you looked horrified initially, but
I'm buzzing that I'm not in person right now. I didn't have to hold that squat in front of you guys. You'd have been, your technique is absolutely. Where's it? Pressure in the heels, lad. Pressure in the heels.
I know. We dusted off the PT cobwebs just for you.
Oh no, that's good fun, guys. Oh, I can't believe that you guys get to do this like all the time. It's such good conversations to have, isn't it?
Oh, thank you. We appreciate it. It's so funny because it's literally just us sitting about having the conversations that we would anyway. We keep on finding ourselves that we'll be out for dinner in a taxi, going for a drink, and we're like, shut up, save it for the podcast.
Oh, I can imagine that. You guys have to sit there in silence because you're not allowed to talk to each other anymore.
Yeah, pretty much.
Definitely going to do a fly on the wall one at some point. How did you find that? Did you feel as if you managed to get across everything that you wanted to?
I just always worry that I start to ramble and speak absolute shit. But hopefully some of my answers you guys can tell me came across all right. Yeah, I spiral off sometimes.
No, it's not. There's just so much depth to it. Like I said, that was actually then, it posed a problem for us in a good way, because you say something. I was like, there's literally 100. There was 100 different ways that we could have taken the conversation after every single question. That's a good thing because it shows that the depth of the knowledge of the stuff that you're talking about. So no, it's super cool.
Also, you guys, I don't know how long you've been doing it for, but clearly a lot because it's season 3. But your line of questioning, is brilliant. Like, I've got to say, like, I was like, how frick are they coming up with these questions, and what the hell am I going to say now? So there's that, and like, you guys are so smooth. Honestly, like it feels like such a smooth process. I don't know if any of you have like podcasting history, but.
No, not at all. It's funny you say that, Gabriel, because when we first started series 1, like we had literally a script of questions where it's like, we've got to get this, and there's a real structure to it. And we literally, after about 4 or 5 episodes, we just scrapped it because it actually made it much harder. Like now we just join a Zoom or the guest comes in and we just like freeball it, and it's way more relaxed, way more candid, way more chilled, and then you end up getting way higher value conversation out of it rather than being like, I need to ask him like about this thing he did on the 12th of March in 2010. Like it's way more natural this way, and just get better.
I know we said season 3, but the first one we did was in December, and we cram everything into a couple of days. So this is actually probably only our 7th day filming, if you think about it that way.
Oh wow, yeah.
Unbelievable. So smooth.
Thank you very much.
7 days.
7 days, yeah. We always joke about it because we like, if there's any, sometimes we'll do ones just the 3 of us, and one of us will like raise a topic and then we sit and discuss it. And then like some of us will want to say something, but we're just so polite. We're just too polite. So then, especially like with you as well, when there's a guest, like we'll all, instead of one of us just saying and asking a question, a lot of the time we will look at each other because we're just like, does someone else want to ask a question? We're just too polite sometimes.
No, you managed it well. It was smooth, and I like the way you do it. I don't think podcasting and scripting must be so difficult because you're trying to have a smooth conversation, and I'm assuming the listeners, essentially, the whole point of a podcast is you want to just pretend you're in the room with them. Yeah. And the moment there's some scripting going into that and you're listening to that, I suppose the kind of feeling to the listener is like, oh, this doesn't feel like I'm sitting in a conversation. It feels like I'm sitting in a recording. Yeah. So I mean, as a podcast listener myself, I think me and Danny listen to the same one. We love our Diary of a CEO.
Oh, yeah. We all do.
We all do. Big fan.
You're also big listeners, yeah. But I think the whole reason why you love those kind of podcasts is it genuinely just feels like you're sitting in the room listening to that conversation, and you're part of it. And that's why podcasts are taking off, because it's just that, again, that sense of community, that sense that like you're actually relating to the people in the room. So you guys have absolutely smashed it. It felt natural. I mean, obviously it did to me. I was having the conversation in the room, but I can from the ones I've listened to and series 1, they already sound like you got the hang of it. So like, honestly, congrats guys, doing well.
Thank you. It's funny because we I don't know if we'll get better at this or if it'll just be like forever, but one thing that all of us are guilty of is sometimes like the conversation's so good, and especially someone like yourself who can speak for like at length, I just like sit and listen and I forget that I'm the host. Yeah. Like I'm one of the hosts. We need to ask questions. I'm just like, yeah, that's fucking great. I'm like thinking about how I'm going to apply it to my life. Like forgetting that we're actually recording a podcast. Maybe we'll get better at that. I'm not sure, but sometimes I think we all do it and we all just
so guilty.
We just look at each other like, oh shit, question.
No, that's good, isn't it? That's probably what you enjoy the most, right? That's why you're doing this, like I say, on a daily basis, but for 7 days since December. Because you guys are clearly enjoying these conversations and you guys take so much from it. So yeah, unbelievable and good on you. It's such a you're making me want to start a podcast, to be honest.
Yeah, go mate.
Go.
Do it. Content creation. That's it.
Yeah, we'll come on.
Let me get the newsletter and the YouTube videos out of the way first. one step at a time. I know about overloading myself, so I'm going to maybe dial it back. That'll be next year.
But no, mate, honestly, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. So we are about to release season 2 next week. So I think that will be then about 7-8 weeks 9 weeks till this is out. So probably about a couple months till this is out. But what we'll do is we'll obviously have all the video. We've got YouTube. We'll cut it into reels, images, all that type of stuff, and we'll fire them over to you via Jake. Because any way of supporting it would be massively appreciated. But yeah, just thank you so much. I love that. That was brilliant.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Really appreciate it.
Having me, lads. Back to the 9 to 5 now.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of the day, mate. It's great to have you on,
guys.
Take care, mate. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.